All right, listeners, ready for another deep dive? Today we're going to be time traveling back about 100 years to the 1900s,
Early 1900s.
early 1900s, to World War One.
Yeah?
And we're going to be talking about some of the most
Unbelievable.
crazy, like mind-blowing facts. So
Oh,
we're talking explosions heard across entire countries. And get this, elephants on the battlefield.
yeah,
What? I know.
that's right.
We're using an article from the Atlantic Council here, which just dropped a whole bunch of World War One trivia.
Mm-hmm.
So to help us make sense of all this and connect all the dots and really blow our minds with this information, I've got our history expert here with me today.
Hello.
So let's kick things off by talking about what started it all.
Sure.
I mean, assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. We all kind of learned about that in high school.
Mm-hmm.
But how does one dude getting shot lead to this massive global war? I mean,
Yeah, so Europe in 1914 was kind of like a high school cafeteria, just with like giant alliances instead of cliques.
right.
So you've got the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy. They're all friends. They have each other's backs.
Okay.
Then you've got the Triple Entente, France, Russia, Great Britain. They're all buddy-buddy.
Right.
So when Austria-Hungary blames Serbia for the assassination and they're like, you know what, it's go time, their alliances kick in.
That's on.
Germany says, I got you, Austria-Hungary. Russia's like, no, I got you, Serbia. And one by one, all these other countries get pulled in. It's like a chain reaction.
Okay, so it's like my friend's tougher than your friend, except with way higher stakes.
Exactly.
All right, so everybody's picking sides, tensions are high.
Yeah.
But what about Italy? They were originally part of the Triple Alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary, but then they switched sides.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what's up with that?
Yeah. Italy was kind of playing the long game. They saw a chance to snag some land by joining the Allies instead, so they weren't really known for their loyalty.
So they basically ditched their friends for a chance to get more land.
Pretty much.
I guess gotta admire the hustle. But speaking of late arrivals to the party, what about the United States? I mean, they didn't jump right in, did they?
Not at first. They wanted to stay neutral.
Stay out of it.
Yeah, until this little thing called the Zimmerman telegram came along.
Oh, the Zimmerman telegram. I've heard of that.
Okay, so picture this.
Yeah.
A secret message
Okay.
gets intercepted, and it turns out Germany is trying to convince Mexico to join their side.
Wow.
And what are they offering in return? Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico, land that Mexico lost to the U.S. like way back.
Okay, that's a bold move.
Yeah.
Big time.
So I'm guessing America didn't love that.
Yeah, no, they were not happy.
I mean, you try to steal my lawnmower and give it to my neighbor.
Right.
See what happens.
So yeah, American public opinion goes from neutral to let's fight
Yeah.
real quick.
Okay, so the U.S. finally joins the party in 1917, and things get even crazier.
Yeah.
But let's be real for a sec. This wasn't just some game. The human cost of World War I was insane.
Like our article mentions the Battle of the Somme, and the number of casualties is just mind-boggling.
The Battle of the Somme, it's like a textbook example of how brutal trench warfare was. I mean, we're talking almost 60,000 British soldiers either killed or wounded on the first day alone.
And the first day?
Yeah, July 1st, 1916. That's more British soldiers lost in one day than in the entire Falklands War, the Korean War, and the Iraq War combined.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the Somme wasn't like a one-time thing. The war went on for years, and every battle had countless lives lost.
Right, and then like the Battle of Verdun that lasted for 300 days, almost an entire year.
Oh my gosh.
And neither side really gained anything strategically. It just became the symbol of like attrition and resilience.
300 days. Imagine.
Incredible.
Yeah, and they estimate around 800,000 total casualties.
And let's not forget about those 9 French villages that were completely destroyed during the fighting around Verdun. They're still considered ghost towns today. Yeah, it's like a really sobering reminder of how permanent the scars of war can be, not just on individuals, but on entire places and communities.
Okay, so we've talked about the men fighting in the trenches, but World War I wasn't just a boys' club.
Right.
Our article mentions these female shock battalions in Russia.
Yeah.
Like women in combat, that's not something you hear about every day.
Well, Russia was facing massive losses and morale was plummeting.
Yeah.
So they formed these all-female combat units.
So were they trying to shame the men into fighting harder?
Kind of, but also they wanted to show the world how fierce and patriotic Russian women were.
So basically they were thrown into the most dangerous situations and expected to be both soldiers and symbols.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, they fought bravely, but they suffered heavy casualties too, and eventually the experiment was abandoned.
But it's incredibly badass and deeply tragic at the same time.
Exactly.
Okay, ready for another one of those wait what moments? Remember that thing about explosions in Belgium being heard all the way in London?
Oh.
Tell me that's not just some crazy story.
No, that's the Messines. My seriously wild feat of engineering.
Okay, tell me more.
So it's 1917. British forces are like stuck in this stalemate with the Germans.
Right.
They come up with this plan to dig a network of tunnels, miles of tunnels underneath the German lines.
Okay.
And they pack these tunnels with 1 million pounds of explosive.
1 million pounds of explosives.
That's a lot of boom.
That's a whole lot of boom.
Yeah, and when they detonated those mines, the explosions were so massive, they were felt in London over 140 miles away.
I bet you could hear it in Buckingham Palace.
Oh yeah, one of the largest man-made explosions before the atomic age.
And imagine being a German soldier just chilling above those tunnels.
Not a good day.
Not a good day at all. But speaking of unbelievable things happening during the war, did you know they use elephants?
Yeah?
Like actual elephants on the battlefield?
Well, not exactly on the battlefield, but they definitely played a role.
Okay.
So, with all these horses serving in the war, there was a shortage of animals for like labor back home. So that's where Lizzie the elephant comes in.
Lizzie the elephant. I'm intrigued.
Well, Lizzie was an Indian elephant, and she became a local hero in Sheffield, England.
Okay.
They turned to circus animals like Lizzie to help out with hauling supplies and materials because there weren't enough horses.
Wow. So Lizzie the war elephant?
Yeah, she even wore special boots to protect her feet.
I love it. Proof that even in the darkest times, there's always room for, like, heartwarming weirdness.
It shows you how resilient and adaptable humans and animals can be during a crisis.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So World War I, this crazy mix of tragedy, innovation, and just plain bizarre events.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're ready to talk about what happened after the war, the Treaty of Versailles,
Okay.
and how it set the stage for what came next. But first, I need a minute to process this whole elephant-powered awesomeness.
Sure. So are we ready to tackle this Treaty of Versailles?
Let's do it. I mean, from what I remember, it wasn't exactly sunshine and rainbows.
No, not really. More like setting the stage for round two, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
So the treaty was signed in 1919, and it was supposed to officially end the war and bring lasting peace.
Right.
But the way they went about it had some serious unintended consequences.
Like it says in the article, they signed it in the same hall where the German Empire was declared back in 1871.
Yeah.
Talk about adding insult to injury.
It was a total power move by the winners, especially France.
Yeah.
They wanted to humiliate Germany and make them pay for the whole war.
Ouch.
The problem was the terms were so harsh that they ended up backfiring big time.
So we're talking losing land restrictions on their military and those massive reparation payments that crippled their economy.
Exactly, and those reparations weren't just financially devastating. They also fueled this idea that Germany was solely to blame for the war.
Right.
It created resentment and helped extremist ideologies like Nazism gain traction in the years that followed.
So the treaty, instead of preventing future wars, actually kind of helped cause the next one.
It's a classic example of how short-sightedness and revenge can have some really terrible long-term consequences.
It makes you wonder, what if they had tried a different approach? You know, focused on rebuilding and reconciliation instead of punishment.
Yeah, it's a question historians still debate today, but what we do know is that the Treaty of Versailles had a major impact on the 20th century.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Okay, enough doom and gloom. Let's move on to something a bit more positive. The birth of new nations.
Okay.
The article says 9 new countries popped up after World War I. 9.
9. That's a serious makeover for the map of Europe.
Imagine all the excitement and chaos figuring out new borders, new identities.
It was a time of huge change and upheaval. Some countries like Poland got their independence back after being ruled by other countries for years.
Wow.
Others like Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia were brand new countries formed by bringing together different groups and regions.
So I imagine there was a lot of hope, but also some uncertainty.
Absolutely new opportunities, but also potential for new conflicts.
Right. The redrawing of borders always has consequences. We see that even today.
It reminds us that history isn't just something we read about in books. It's still shaping our world in so many ways.
Speaking of legacies, we can't forget about the League of Nations, humanity's first real shot at a global organization to try and prevent another world war.
Right.
Noble idea, but it didn't exactly work out.
The League of Nations, it was a bold experiment built on international cooperation and collective security.
So the idea was that by working together, countries could avoid the kind of nationalism and militarism that led to World War I.
Exactly.
Sounds good in theory, but what went wrong?
A few things. It didn't have any real power to enforce its decisions, and some major players like the United States never joined.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, the rise of aggressive ideologies like fascism and the global economic depression in the 1930s created problems the League just couldn't handle.
So it was a good effort, but maybe too idealistic for the time.
In a lot of ways, yeah, but we can't say it was a total failure.
Right.
It laid the groundwork for the United Nations, which learned from the League's mistakes and has been more successful at promoting peace and cooperation.
So even in failure, there can be progress.
Exactly.
It shows that building a more peaceful world is a long and complicated process full of setbacks and learning curves. Okay, I think we've covered a lot today, from elephant-powered factories to the rise and fall of empires.
We have.
World War I was clearly more than just trenches and battles. All right, we are back for the final part of our World War I deep dive.
I know. Can you believe all the crazy stuff we've learned?
Seriously, who knew there was so much more to this war than just, the trenches and the battles?
It's amazing what you find when you dig a little deeper.
Right, like World War I might be known for being really dark and serious, but it also shows how resilient people are and how innovative they can be.
And a little bit strange sometimes too, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, Lizzie the war elephant? Come on, that's my new hero. Talk about resourcefulness.
For sure. But beyond the fun facts and the stories, the thing that really hits home is how much World War I still affects us today.
Absolutely. It changed the map of the world. It led to organizations like the United Nations. The impact is still felt everywhere.
Big time.
So let's do a quick recap of some of the craziest things we talked about.
Okay.
First off, the sheer scale of this war is mind-blowing. Millions of casualties, battles that lasted for months, explosions that could be felt for hundreds of miles.
It's hard to even imagine.
Right, and the Battle of the Somme, with all those soldiers lost in just one day. It's just a chilling reminder of what war really costs.
Yeah, and then Verdun, 300 days of fighting for practically nothing.
It's unbelievable. But even with all that darkness, there were moments of hope and ingenuity.
Like those Russian female shock battalions.
Seriously, women stepping up to fight for their country during that chaos. It's both inspiring and heartbreaking.
Their story and the contributions of so many other women during the war, it's something we should never forget.
Absolutely. They challenge what we think about traditional gender roles and show us that there are all sorts of ways people can contribute in times of crisis.
For sure.
And we can't forget about those weird, quirky details like Lizzie hauling supplies in England and those German lines getting blown up by 1 million pounds of explosives.
Right.
It's those little things that make history come alive.
Yeah.
They make it feel real and relatable.
And sometimes even funny in a strange sort of way.
Exactly. They remind us that even in the middle of a world war, life goes on and people adapt and they invent things and they even find reasons to laugh.
That's the human spirit for you, I guess.
Okay, I have to ask, what facts surprised you the most today? Was it the Messines mine, or did Lizzie steal your heart?
Those are all amazing, but what really sticks with me is the bigger picture. We've seen the long-term consequences of World War I, the rise of extremism, the League of Nations failing, and then another world war happening. How can we use what we know now to prevent those kinds of tragedies from happening again?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's easy to get caught up in the exciting details, but history is really about learning from the past so we can make a better future.
I couldn't agree more. It's about understanding why conflicts happen, building empathy between different countries, and working to fix the things that cause violence and injustice in the first place.
Well said. A huge thank you to our expert for joining us today and sharing all this incredible knowledge about World War I.
My pleasure.
And to you, our listeners, thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep those brains buzzing.